Welcome to the Bankless by Design podcast, where we rethink money, ditch the system, and rediscover what it means to truly thrive well. I'm Tricia Miller, mom of 7, financial coach, and founder of ThriveWell. Around here, we believe wealth is more than numbers. It's about freedom, stewardship, and building a legacy that lasts. If you're ready to challenge the norm and take back control of your financial life, you're in the right place. Hello, and welcome back to the Bankless by Design podcast. Today, I am so excited to have a dear friend of mine, Becca Wilhite, with me, and she has graciously accepted my invitation to be my very first guest on the podcast. So welcome, Becca.
Thank you so much for having me. I feel so very honored to be your first guest.
Well, you have been just such a huge encouragement to me through this journey of, being a practitioner. And of course, your book has been super instrumental as well. So I had to have you be the very first one.
But so glad to be here.
To just kind of give a little bit of background to our listeners here today, I want to just share that you are a wife and a mom of 3 kids. She describes herself as a lifelong learner. I identify with that as well. You have a background in athletics as a basketball player, right? Tell me just a little bit about that.
Yes. Well, basketball from about high school on was pretty much my life. I went and played in college at a little school out in West Texas, here where I live still today in Plainview. So that I thought I wanted to be a teacher and a coach, and was for a number of years. And you know how life takes your twists and turns. I never thought I would be doing what I'm doing today. Didn't even know it existed. But yeah, I think that background in athletics of just coaching, especially, and motivating and trying to encourage people along has been really helpful with clients, and just taking that same mentality to try to help teach and coach people along this path. So
absolutely. That's a huge part of this whole process, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
All right. And I also understand that you were a worship leader at your church. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah. Again, just one of those things I never expected. I think I sing and play the guitar. And after we had our first baby, I was going to stay home and take care of kids and not try to teach, coach, do all that. My hat's off to anybody who can do all of that well. It's a lot. So our church needed somebody to kind of temporarily fill in. Could you just do this for a little while? And a little while turned into 11 years.
Oh, wow.
So really, really loved that season of being on staff at my church and being able to participate in that way, lead teams in a musical sense as well. So I don't know, it feels like whatever I'm doing, I end up coaching and teaching in some way, in some form or fashion that seems to come out. So I'm thankful for each season that I've been through. I wouldn't trade any of them, but this one is equally great, equally fun.
Yeah, I love that, because we actually do share that in common, that we both have church staff backgrounds.
Yeah.
So I don't know. There's just a lot of things I think that you and I have in common. But of course, Becca is also an authorized practitioner with the Nash Institute. And the book that you've written is also endorsed by the Institute, right?
Well, they haven't shot me down. So yeah, they've allowed me to have that for sale at the think tank. So I would say that it's gotten their seal of approval.
That's right. And it's called Beaver Bankers. And
Mm-hmm.
I have a copy of it right here. I'm going to just kind of throw it up here on the camera just a little bit. And one of the things that I absolutely loved when I read this book, I know it is written primarily for children, although I really think adults get so much from it. At least I know I did, because it just gives a perspective of the infinite banking concept that is very different than from a financial. We think of it mathematically. We think of it as what's going to do for me. But this kind of shows just a beautiful picture of the environment that you can create in your family. So I've actually used this book for my very first family banking meeting and had my granddaughter read it just to kind of give the concept. But before we go into all of that too much, I don't want to spoil the interview here, because I want you to be able to share a lot about it. Let me just say thank you so much for being here today. And I did want to ask you, because I was trying to remember how we first met. Now, the first time in person, I
Yeah.
think, was at the think tank.
Uh-huh. I was thinking about that same thing. I was like, "Where did I feel like I've known Tricia forever. Where did we meet?" But I
Yes,
think
a
it
little
was
bit.
from we were in the same mastermind. I don't remember who reached out to who, but we said, "Hey, let's connect. I just would like to let's get to know each
Yeah,
other just a little bit." And so I think, as we talked and had, like you said, had a lot of things in common and just kind of have stayed friends and grown that friendship ever since.
that's right. I think I sent you a Marco Polo.
Probably.
And then the rest is history. And then we also roomed together at the coaching academy
Yeah, yeah. So that's how you
and
really get to know somebody. You
a
share a
think
hotel
tank.
room.
So, yes, it's been absolutely great. And all right, so let's go ahead and start at the beginning just a little bit. I really want to know your story. I'd love for you to share it with my listeners because you have a fantastic story of what drew you into the infinite banking concept. And especially, let me just caveat that here. I have been the last few episodes really talking to specifically the critics of whole life insurance,
Mhm.
namely a lot of Dave Ramsey followers. And I
Yes.
know that's some of your background. So please do share.
Yes, absolutely. So if we rewind about 5 or 6 years, I believe it was probably 2020 when I first heard about this, and, a friend of mine had gotten into selling insurance, and one of the programs that her company had was like a debt elimination kinda strategy using whole life insurance. So again, I was from the Dave Ramsey school of thought. As soon as I heard whole life, I was totally like, "Nope, shut down. It's a bad idea." Plus, we were Dave Ramsey followers. Our only debt was our mortgage, so I didn't really feel like that applied to me at all, right? So
Mhm.
I just didn't think another thing of it. Well, my friend who's teaching this is making the rounds in our community and presenting to people, and we have a mutual friend who had invited her over, and the mutual friend reached out to me and said, "Hey, I know you kinda know about finances, from a layperson's perspective. I was no expert, right?
Uh-huh.
Would you come and just listen? Just come because we just don't know if this is a good idea or not. We just come listen to it so you can give us your perspective." And so I said, "Okay," very reluctantly. "I'm gonna come so you don't get scammed." Right? That was
Right.
my motivation. I don't want my friend to get scammed. I'm sure she means well, the presenter, I'm sure she has good intention, but she's
Mm.
obviously been tricked, right? So I come into this and I'm like, seriously, arms crossed, like just not, trying to be friendly, but I've already made up my mind what I think about this.
Mhm.
But as she went through the program of her presentation and just trying to, just kind of it was a lot about what whole life can do and how this can work for you, and I just found myself saying, well, I didn't know that's how that worked," or, "Huh,
Mhm.
really? Like, life insurance can do that?" Like, no, I don't think that's right." Just kinda still very skeptical. And so we got finished with that meeting, and several days later, I called my insurance agent because I had some questions, and I'm like, "Can you explain this whole life thing to me, and does it really work like that?" Long story short, he didn't know. He could not answer the questions I was asking. He was mostly a PNC guy, right? Kinda did a
Okay.
little whole life on the side. But it made me very curious, and so I started, doing my research on the internet and found out very quickly there was numerous viewpoints and ideas, but just kinda delving into some of that, I finally ended up at the Nelson Nash Institute and the infinite banking concept. Now, she hadn't talked about any of that, but I just kinda put 2 and 2 together and said, "Okay, I think this idea probably started here, so maybe this is where I need to start as well."
Okay. Let me this is a clarifying point I didn't realize. So
Yeah,
when you went to that presentation, this wasn't somebody presenting infinite banking concept
it was not. It
as
was
per
not.
Nelson Nash. Okay.
Right. It was a debt reduction strategy that I guess you could say had some of the same ideas, principles in
Okay.
some ways.
Sure.
Um, so as fate would have it, that this was 2020, right after the same time frame, my whole family got COVID. We weren't super sick, thankfully, but we're stuck, right? We're stuck
Right.
in the house for probably 6 weeks, something like that. I had lots of time on my hands. so, so I ordered Becoming Your Own Banker. I read that, and that, you know, I didn't really understand all of it, but it just I kept asking. It just brought up more and more and more questions, right? And so over the next, I'd say 6 months or so, I just totally went down the rabbit hole, really with the intention of proving myself right. Like, I'm right, they are wrong. Let me make sure what I think is right. Let me prove to myself. And obviously kind of came to the opposite conclusion of, oh my goodness, like I had no idea this was this powerful of a tool. I had no idea that this was this powerful of an idea. I had no idea that taking control of banking in your life could reap such incredible benefits, could turn these tailwinds into headwinds. Nobody had ever told me that. I'd never been exposed to these ideas.
Sure.
And so I really came to the point of, okay, I think Dave and I just disagree. I think he does a lot of good things,
Right.
but I think he doesn't understand this. Like most people don't understand this. Like I didn't understand this. Like my insurance agent didn't understand this.
Isn't that sad? It's true though. A
Yeah,
lot of what
yeah,
yeah, it's very true. So, a couple things you said there, though, it's interesting because COVID in 2020, I swear, more changes have happened in people's
yeah,
lives because we actually
yeah,
had the time to sit back and think, you know?
yeah.
Like, there was just a time where we weren't running in the rat race, like, we all slowed down, and I think
Mhm.
that made um, just seismic shifts in so many things
Yeah.
because that was also same time frame for me too. So
Mhm.
really interesting. You mentioned you immediately had a closed mind to this
Mhm.
because you were a Dave Ramsey follower and you had just heard that narrative, but really had never dug in and probably even seen a whole life policy. Would I be correct in
Yeah.
saying that? Like you'd never
Um Actually, I will say, I remember, we had this was a different insurance agent, seemed like there was a lot of turnaround, but could come to our house to kinda review policies, and he was a
okay.
newer guy, and he kinda brought his mentor with him, and he was trying to kinda pitch whole life to us at the time, and I was like, "No, it's buy term and invest the difference. That's what you do."
Mhm.
And that's what we do. That's what I said.
Oh, uh-huh.
And he looked at me and he said, "Well, are you? Are you investing the difference?" And I was like, well, not actually, but, I'm going to."
Right.
This whole thing, right? We were buying term and spending the difference is what we were doing.
Right, and that's what most people do. You're absolutely
Yeah,
right.
so, I mean, I think I'd been exposed, but really, honestly, like, I remember having the thought, my good friend who was at that dinner table, who had come to talk to us about all this, I was kind of offended that he was selling whole life. I was like, "Do you not know? I know you have integrity, so I don't think it's that. So do you just not know how horrible of a product this is?" Like, I didn't say this, but these are the
The
thoughts,
thought.
right, rolling around
Mhm,
in my head. How can you sell this to people?
mhm.
It's a terrible product. It's a scam. And frankly, I was just wrong. I didn't understand. I
Right.
didn't know what I didn't know. Um,
Yes, and I
so
think that right there is key. People don't
mhm.
know what they don't know. How would you? But,
Yeah.
yeah, but that's often the case, right? Is that we just hear this, that it's horrible, and just take it as gospel because maybe everything else that this person has said has felt so true that you kind
Mhm.
of make that assumption and don't really ever look under the hood. So, when you were going through this process, what do you think was the biggest challenge? I mean, maybe besides that narrative for you to really
Mhm.
understand and grasp the concept?
I think for me, probably this idea of debt is bad. Debt is always bad
Mhm.
because that was deeply, deeply ingrained in me.
Oh,
I've kind of
yeah.
labeled myself, I'm a zero lover. I want to be at zero, zero debt, zero, but what I realized is that in that line of thinking, I was also at zero. We were also at zero accumulation.
Right.
When you think about the example a lot of people use of having a line of zero,
Mhm.
and most people either go below the line and borrow and pay back with interest, right? They go into debt and borrow for things, or they save up and then liquidate that account to pay cash for things. Like we were the cash person.
Mhm.
But either way you do that, you're both coming back to zero. you're not getting ahead. And I think that is the thing when I saw that, that really clicked for me. I was like, okay, this is us. We've been
Yeah.
doing all the right things. We've been doing the things that Dave says, or the financial gurus of the day, right? We're being disciplined, we're saving, we're investing, we're doing all this, but we don't have anything to show for it,
Right.
And so I think that for me was the kind of the light bulb moment, the first one of many, I would say,
Mhm.
of okay, maybe there's a different way to think about this. Maybe there's a different way that we could manage our cash flows that would help us in the long run instead of just helping the banks.
Right. To become that wealth creator.
Yeah,
Because
yeah,
really, I mean, we all need I like to think of it too, that being at 0, you still don't have you haven't created any cash flow, right?
hmm
And I always love it. Mary Jo Ehrman says the guy begging for bread on the street, he's got the same problem. He's at 0, he needs cash flow. Well, so do you. If you got all your debts paid off, that's great, but you still have
yeah,
nothing coming in. Debt, all debt is bad mentality. It's interesting because just this morning, I'm scrolling on social media, and I come across this
hmm
post, and it's actually a pretty good post, except for obviously it's not infinite banking and there is risk involved. Um,
hmm
but the idea is that wealthy people buy assets, borrow against them, and die.
yeah,
And then because of that, they were talking about how they never pay taxes because they never
right,
sell. They borrow and live off of their borrowing against the
hmm
assets that they've built. Well, and of course, they were talking about, you know, buying lots of stock, $1,000,000 of stock, right? And then borrowing
hmm
against that. Of course, there's always the risk. Everything's fine until it's not, and the stock
hmm
market stays going up, right? But in principle, the idea is still kind of similar in the
hmm
sense with infinite banking, except we have guarantees underneath it, right? We have an
yeah,
asset that is continually growing and can't go backwards. So it's like doing that on steroids with a safety net in a lot
yeah,
of ways,
yeah.
So
Well, and our friend Joe DeFazio, I'm sure I'll quote him quite a bit in this interview. But he always says it's very different being in debt to a disinterested third party and carrying debt or carrying a loan balance with a company that you are a co-owner in and you control the terms. Those are two very, very
Oh,
different scenarios, right? So over here, if it's a company that you co-own and you control the terms, I kind of see it more like um, repaying your savings account in the old system, right? Like if we took from our savings account, we wanted to put it back, right? But we didn't have to. There wasn't a timeline. We weren't in trouble if we didn't,
right,
right? But as far as the pressure you feel, if that makes
right.
sense, like over
Mhm.
here, you have a timeline, you have a requirement, you will be in trouble if you don't do it, right?
Right,
Over here in this system, it's something we want to replenish, right? We want to replenish the system so that we can use it again.
sure.
But if life happens and we need to put a pause on it for 3 months or 6 months, like it's
You
okay.
can.
It's okay.
Yeah,
Yeah. So
because
it's a
you're in
very
control.
different,
Yeah,
yes, it's control is huge. It's huge.
absolutely. Let me ask you as a practitioner, when someone comes to you and says, "Hey, can you describe the infinite banking concept to me in a nutshell?" I know that's not an easy thing to do because there's a lot to it,
Yeah.
and at the same time, it's simple. How would
Mhm.
you go about doing that?
Well, this is an ever-changing thing. I'm always experimenting. Like, how do you explain this in a nutshell? But I think what makes sense to me is we have millions of dollars that flow through our hands over a lifetime. I mean, just think about all the money that comes in, all the money that goes out just to live on a monthly basis. And we do this month after month after month. And currently, the default system is that all just flows away, just flows
Mhm.
away forever. So what IBC, the infinite banking concept, teaches us to do is to capture some of that, capture incrementally more and more of that so that you can create your own system, your own reservoir, your own pond, so to speak, back to the beaver analogy, right?
Right,
That's kind of where that came from of, beavers, they're not very efficient on land. They're vulnerable to predators. They don't have a food source. They need a different environment so that they can thrive. And so they take this stream, this water that's just flowing, And it takes some time, it takes some effort, and they dam it up, and they create this pond that gives them safety, that gives them a food source, that gives them, and not just for them, but for generations. Some of these beaver dams have been around 70, 80, 100 years, and they just continue to live and thrive, and it provides for their family. And, like, if you could build a system like that, wouldn't that be incredible with your finances? That's what
Absolutely.
we're talking about,
Right.
um,
Right.
in a
Oh,
nutshell.
there's so much there. There's so much there because I do wanna get into your book, but I like just even what you're saying there, all of the money is hitting the books of somebody else's bank. We just
Mhm.
need to get that money. I like the simplicity of what you've said. I think one of the things that I try to say is that you're really only making one little change, and that is making those dollars hit the books of your bank first or
Yeah, we're
diverting it there
starting
to s
yeah, we're starting a banking business.
right, and
Right,
then
Nelson. Oh, go ahead.
and then everything else is the same, right? Like, then you just go about your business as you would anyways.
Right, we could grow this business without interrupting your current cash flow. We could grow this on the side just by being strategic in the way that we move money and not being afraid of a loan balance, right?
Right,
Temporarily.
right, right. No, it's true. Okay. So, anything else you'd like to share? Something you wish you would have done sooner when you were learning the
Mm.
infinite banking concept or, done differently?
The Nelson said that the more you see you didn't see.
Mhm.
And I've heard this story that he a couple of times recently where he would come in and set a quarter down on a table and tell somebody, "This quarter is represents how much you know, and this table is how much there is to know." Right? And the circumference of this quarter is just the amount of this other knowledge that you've been exposed to. Like, you realize there's more to learn, right? And then he takes a glass and sets it down on top of the quarter, which is obviously bigger, right? A
Mhm.
larger circle. And he said, if you expand your knowledge to here, now the circumference of this circle of what you realize you don't know is larger. So the
Wow.
more you learn, the more you see there's more to learn. And so wherever you start, you're going to progress from there. You're gonna learn more and more, and then you're gonna see that there's more and see that there's more. So it's I think human nature to go back and say, "Man, if I knew then what I know now, I would have done this differently." Right?
Right.
But that was part of the journey. That was part of the learning, right? This was never meant to be. I think some people get caught up on, "Oh, my policy has to be perfect. It has to be designed just right, and it has to have, everything has to be perfect." Well, we'll get as close as we can, but just keep in mind, this is just the first in a system. This is gonna
Mhm.
be a system of policies throughout your lifetime to practice the infinite banking concept the way Nelson taught it. It you would probably look back and do something differently just because you have the advantage of knowing what happened in life, right? That's something hindsight's 2020. We can't always see, what's around the corner. So there's so many things that I would do differently, but I don't regret it because, again, it's part of my journey.
Yeah.
I'm so thankful that I uncrossed my arms and went to a presentation that I didn't wanna go to, right?
Right?
To even have this idea presented in some form or fashion. So we find out about it when we find out about it. We implement when we implement, imperfectly, probably, but with good coaching and study and being that lifelong learner, continuing to expand your imagination. I mean, Nelson said this is an exercise in reason and logic, imagination and prophecy. Maybe not in that order. Imagination might have been first. I'm
I
not
think we
sure.
all get it all out of order every time
Yeah,
the other
yeah.
day. Yeah.
But the more you start shifting away from a worldly commercial banking system, and I'm not saying this is perfect. Nothing's perfect this side of heaven, right? But
Right.
into a system that is more aligned with um, sound money principles, with I think biblical principles, with just giving you more control, more peace in your financial life. The more you do that, the more you want to do that. And how can I shift? And I think that's what Nelson taught is we are eventually we want to shift everything over here. We want to have everything in a system that we control and have ownership over and, is working for us and working for future generations. I mean, why wouldn't we? Why
Right.
wouldn't we want to stop the flow of money away from us forever?
Right.
Um, so
Wow.
I don't know if that answers your question.
No, that's pure gold. There was a lot of little nuggets of wisdom in there, and I had never heard that analogy of the quarter. I mean, I've heard a lot of things Nelson taught, but I had not heard that one about the quarter with the glass over it and all of that. Okay. So, let's get into your book just a little bit if we can.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, you bet.
I really wanna hear, the inspiration behind the book, how it all got started.
Okay. Well, with my teaching background, I have always been a fan of analogies. I think that helps people kind of connect dots. And I never set out really to write a children's book. I was just always thinking about how do we teach this simply? And then one day, out of the blue, I call it a divine spark. Just this idea that all of a sudden just pops into your head and you weren't really thinking about that. It's just there.
Uh-huh.
Just had this thought, you should learn about beavers. I'm like, beavers. Okay. Well, what do I know about beavers? So they make the dam and they dam up the river, all those. I
Yeah.
knew the kind of the basics, right? But so I'm Googling beavers and beaver dams and start reading and I'm just like, wow, there are a lot of parallels here to what we do and what we're trying to accomplish with infinite banking. And kind of parallel to that, my thought was this would be great to teach kids. I have 3 children. The youngest at the time was 8. And I didn't feel like, this is something I want to pass on to my kids and teach them how to do, but can't really hand an 8-year-old becoming your own banker. Be like, hey, let's talk about this at dinner,
Right.
right?
Yeah. Thanks, mom.
um, so I just had that idea in my head for several months. And then one day, I think it was a Sunday afternoon, I just had some time and I decided I'm going to go out on the back porch and I'm going to put this in a little story form. And I sat down and wrote the story and just for fun, just never really thought anything would come of it. And the next day I sent it to Bruce Wayner, who's my mentor in with the Nash Institute at the time. And he really encouraged me. He was like, "This is really neat. You should do something with this. You should turn this into a book, publish it." And I was like, "Really? Like, there's some kind of value in this?" And anyway, so kind of just one thing led to another. I had a friend, my friend Jenny Ragland is an incredible illustrator, and I asked her if she'd be interested in painting the pictures. I found a tutorial on YouTube about how to publish a children's book on Amazon. I mean, it was all very DIY, but
Uh-huh.
it was a super fun project to just, learn how to do something new, put something out there and see. I had no idea how it would be received, And so when people actually bought it, I was like, "What? This is crazy."
It's a beautiful book too, like, when you were talking about the illustrating, I mean, it is aesthetically beautiful.
Yeah, well,
Um,
that was important to me because I wanted it to be something that kids could grasp, but that would be enjoyable for parents as well.
right.
And like you said earlier, I've kinda stopped calling it a children's book
Yeah.
and kinda just started saying this is disguised as a children's book, you know? But it's turned out to be a really great way to maybe get a spouse on board or extended family to explain kind of what we're doing. Because I don't know if this has been your experience, but typically when we're meeting with clients, there's one member of the family who's super excited about this, wants to know all the things, and then the spouse is like, "Yeah, yeah, just take care of that, whatever." What until they start talking about these big premiums, and all of a sudden they're like, "What are you doing?"
Uh-huh.
Now they're interested, right? So,
How much are you planning to pay for premium?
yeah,
Yeah.
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 So,
Oh, I guess I would just say, like, for me, the book was just such a beautiful picture of this intergenerational piece, right? Like,
mhm,
this isn't just me, my individual grow wealth. This
mhm,
is can be so much better than this because it can flow down to the next generation and to the next generation, and it can cement bonds between great grandchildren and grandparents. Do you know? And just the
mhm,
picture of this child at this family gathering and going to the back, through the meadow to the pond with the grandfather and him explaining, taking time with this young boy, right? And explaining how this beaver dam has been there. I think in the book you say 70 years. I will tell you
Mhm.
that I had no idea that beaver dams could hang around so long.
Yeah, I didn't either.
And in fact, we have some beavers in my back pond behind my house.
Okay.
And my neighbors get frustrated with the beavers because they dam up a portion of our pond that is supposed to drain out into a bigger,
Okay.
larger lake. So they're constantly having to undo this dam that these beavers do. And I will confess, and I'm not sure I should even confess this on a podcast, but my son at one point went and shot a beaver in the back with a bow and arrow because he was trying to help the neighbors, like not have these beavers. That was then. Now I'm like, no,
Yeah.
I love those beavers. Don't you touch those beavers. Even though the beavers have chewed up 2 of my willow trees. But there is just this idea too, like, because I did a little bit of looking at that when I read your book, that they're like a keystone species too, which
Mhm.
has another significance because they're actually not only helping their own family, right? Then they also
Mhm.
have
Yeah.
a real advantage for all of the other animals in the pond that can survive alongside them.
Right, right. They create this environment that not only helps them, but helps others thrive as well, and again, it's just the more I look into this, I'm like,
Right.
"Wow, that too," and,
So the fact that this just dropped out of the blue to you one day and you call it a divine spark, I just can't help but you don't just sit there and say, "Oh, I'm gonna look into beavers one day."
No,
That's
no,
just
not at
the
all,
end.
and I feel like the Lord has done that so many times in my life. Just, "Here's an idea," and sometimes I'll just not act on it, and it goes away,
Mhm.
and maybe I missed an opportunity, but it's neat those times when you do grab a hold of that and say, "Okay, no, I'm not gonna lose this. I'm gonna go do something with this."
Mhm.
And I think he's constantly feeding us stuff. "What about this? What about this? Have you thought about this?" And trying to help us along in our understanding and, about life. I don't think it just has to be so often we wanna divide, like, the spiritual from the natural, but I think he's just wanting to help us along our way. Isn't that even with this whole thing with infinite banking? I mean, Nelson says in his book that this was an answer to prayer,
Yeah.
right? This came with him down on his knees from 3 to 4 in the morning over a period of months, just waking up and adding to the idea, right? And
Right.
to me, that's that's divine. I
Yes.
mean, I'm not that doesn't mean that everybody has to do it, or if you're a Christian, you have to do this, or you have to be a
Right.
Christian to do that. Doesn't mean any of that. But I think that the heart of our Father is to help us think of ways that are out of the box to thrive in the world that we're in. We're to be in the world, not of the world. So to me, that says that we should have creative ideas, that we should
Mhm.
have ways of doing things that aren't like everybody else. That I love what it says in Romans 12:2. It says, "Don't be conformed to the patterns of the world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind." Isn't that what Nelson was always talking about? Rethink your thinking.
Mhm.
Rethink your thinking, right?
Mhm.
What are the patterns, the banking pattern of the world? Is it particularly lined up with scripture? No, I don't think so. They take all of our money, we give them all of our money. We give them everything we have, and then they loan out, you know, tons more and
Mhm.
charge interest on money that wasn't even really there. It was just an entry on a ledger. Is that fair? Are those honest scales?
No. Yeah.
I'm not saying that my neighborhood banker is evil. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying I think that this this idea that Nelson had, it deals with real money, sound money. We're not contributing to inflation. We have control. We're not being taken advantage of in the same ways that are very prevalent, or even, credit cards, those kinds of things that are charging just tremendous interest and making it really hard for people to get ahead. Um, anyway, that might be a whole other podcast.
No, but you're definitely onto something that I'm very passionate about because I mean, even the 8th commandment, do not steal, right?
Mhm.
Also deals with working with honest weights and measures. And the average
Yeah.
person is just completely unaware that when they are performing the process of banking, like we all have to, and we just
Mhm.
do it without much thought because we've never thought that there's any alternative. And yet, every
Mhm.
time you do that, and the bank is then making additional or loaning additional monies that didn't even exist before. I mean, we can't do that. It would be considered
Mhm.
fraud. And yet,
Right.
somehow, this banking system has given a pass at fraud to the bankers. And therefore, they don't have to put their hard labor, sweat, and tears to earning dollars to be able to lend them to you. They get to just
Mhm.
add digits on the page, effectively increasing the money supply in our system, which then devalues the dollars in our wallet. That's theft. I mean, in reality, we just don't always
Yeah.
see that. And so then when you come into infinite banking and start understanding that, oh, the life insurance company, when I borrow from against my cash values and I use the life insurance company's money, they don't have the privilege of fraud.
No.
They actually have to give you dollars that they have actually earned, right? So
Yeah.
it's just becomes a more fair and honest system. And then we're no longer contributing to that problem. So, no, I love that. And I know we have also in the past talked a little bit about that Christian worldview that I believe undergirds this whole concept. Of course, certainly Nelson himself being a very devout Christian and and a real thinker himself
Mhm.
in so many areas. I mean, I just even look at the back of the book in his recommended reading, and I'm astonished by the amount of books he has in that recommended reading section. I don't know that that means that that's all. I'm sure it wasn't all the books he ever read. It's just the ones he's recommended. And that alone
Right.
is a big undertaking. So there's that. But also just, this idea we talked about it being kind of redemptive. Remember, we had that conversation one time
Mm.
about how
Oh,
redemptive this
yeah.
is as a system. Can you recall some of that? Because
Yeah.
it was
Uh,
such a good
that
little.
might would have been one of those sparks that I didn't do anything with, and it left me. No, I was kidding.
I know.
No, I actually heard this from someone else just speaking about life insurance in general. Okay, just so apart from IBC, but just life insurance in general of, if you have a young family and you have a business and you have books you're going to write or businesses you're going to start or, the great things ahead. And for tragically, if your life were cut short, being properly insured would pay your family as if you did all those things, as if you were able to complete all of those purposes that were here for you on this earth. So I think that is a really redemptive idea there,
Mhm.
as far as protecting your family. But if even in the IBC world and trying to obey Proverbs 13:22, which says that a good man leaves an inheritance to his children's children. That used to be such a discouraging verse to me,
Hmm.
honestly, because I just looked at our situation, even saying we're doing all the right things, but I hope we leave anything at all to our kids, much less our grandkids. I just can't
Right.
even I couldn't even
Fathom.
comprehend a scenario that we would be able to do that. And then in learning about IBC and how that all works and how it can be implemented generationally, I was like, "Oh, that's not hard." We can
Right.
set something up today that would do that. And so, I don't know, I think it just brings a lot of hope back into your financial life. We're gonna be okay. It's gonna be enough, right? It's gonna be enough. And I think, it talks about in scripture how the love of money is the root of all evil and that we shouldn't chase after riches and all these things. And at first I was a little conflicted. I was like, wait a second, am I chasing after riches? Am I storing up for myself? But I think this is different. It's like what we're saying is, I'm gonna use a system that I know I'm gonna have enough so that I don't have to go chase.
Right.
I don't have to go chase after, you know, the grand slam lottery or winning big in the stock market. I mean, if I wanna do those things, I can, but we're building a system that's gonna be enough. It's going to be enough for us. It's going to be enough to bless others. It's going to be enough to bless the next generation. I want to teach them the same things, and then it just gets bigger and bigger the longer it's practiced. Um, so is that redemptive? I don't know that that's what I touched on before,
Well, it
but
it is, and I think we kind of mentioned, when we had this conversation, this idea that when well, let me back up just a second. When I think about the overarching themes of Scripture, God
Mhm,
made man and woman, and He put them in a garden. He told them to tend it and keep it, and of course, sin came in, and they were cast away from the garden, but He didn't cast them out of the garden without a promise to send a redeemer who was going to bring about redemption and a new creation. And then we
yeah,
see in Revelation, at the end of the book, the city of God coming down out of heaven. And we see the kings of the earth going in and out of this beautiful city where Jesus Christ himself is the light of the world. And we see a flourishing city. So when I look at that, I look at the overview of you start out in a garden and you wind up in this city with all of this
mhm,
culture and all of this beauty and everything that um, we as human beings have maybe made is now made for God's glory, and it is flourishing. And so there's this growth. It's kind of like this idea of
mhm,
God is in the business of bringing flowers out of the dirt, right? He's
yeah,
so this flourishing of humanity. I mean, I think one of the things I think it's faulty sometimes in our thinking when I think about the Gospels, we have a tendency to think that God came to save us so that we would not be human, we'd be some kind of superhuman. Actually, He made us to be human, and when He redeems us, He redeems our humanity. He came to be a man and to be this human as we were intended to be, right?
mhm,
And so all of the things that we put our hand to, we are to put our hand to for His glory. And so
mhm,
I don't know. There's a lot in my head. Sometimes I can't quite get the ideas out that I'm
yeah,
trying to say, but this idea, and I know it's just money, but it's not just
mhm,
money because money is a vehicle in which we can care for the sick. We
mhm,
can provide for our children and our grandchildren, and we can create beautiful things in this world for God's glory with money. And so
mhm,
it's not just about the money as if money's a dirty thing, right? I want to see that
mhm,
money go and do good things in the world. So when we
mhm,
have the ability to pass this on generation after generation, which is kind of going back to our conversation, there's this flourishing that just grows more and more and more abundant with every generation that it passes down to, like
mhm,
a never-ending fountain or a never-ending waterfall of
mhm.
potential blessing. And so
Yeah,
that's, and I think we also talked about the fact that, like, when you save money and you spend it, it's gone. But with this, it doesn't do that. It just gets replenished, right? With every
yeah,
generation that passes into a
yeah,
greater amount than what you had in the beginning.
yeah, and when you contrast that with kind of what we've been taught with modern financial planning, and again, not saying it's right or wrong, it's just a contrast, right? Is that we're taught that we need to put money away and hope it grows into a big enough pile that it won't run out before we die.
Right.
And even if there's leftover, even if there are, like, retirement accounts that have money that's passing to our children, as the law stands right now, those have to be liquidated within 10 years. It's like
Mhm.
you can't let them keep growing. You have to liquidate them or
Right.
face these big penalties and fines, right? And so it's like the system that we've been taught is designed to die with you. It's designed to run out. It's designed to expire.
Right.
Whereas this other system is the opposite. It's designed to grow and flourish and grow and grow and grow. And as long as you treat it correctly, you treat it like a business,
Mhm.
right? This is not a magic money machine.
Right.
This is a business that you're starting that you have to capitalize, that you have to be honest with. But if you do those things, it becomes what you're describing every time.
Better
There it's
and better with age.
Yeah, better
Yeah.
and better and better with each generation.
Right.
And it's just a very powerful, I think, shift in thought. And if I could just comment on one thing you said about money a minute ago. money is, yes, it is a tool, but I think it's also can be a big stressor. It's one of the main causes of divorce in marriage is fights over money, right?
Mhm.
And my husband and I were talking last night, and he made a comment that I don't know, it just was really neat to me. He said, "You know, I feel like you've changed the way you respond when we need a big chunk of money for something. Like, we've just had some big expenses, like some, cars in the shop or, just different things that just out of the blue that we weren't expecting that. We had a flood in our kitchen or having to replace a bunch of flooring, just all those kinds of things." And he said, "You now you talk about it so calmly, like there's no stress. He said, "I really appreciate that." Like, "Well, we need to do this." "Okay, well, tell me what you need and we'll get it done." Right? And
Yeah,
that's not because all of a sudden we're rich. I
right,
think we're very normal people, but it's like we have a system that we can draw from when we need it and put it back and not have to worry about that affecting some long range outcome that we were counting on, right? We can do that
right.
and the outcome is the same. We can use it as we go along. Our capital is not locked up behind some IRS door that says, no access to 59 and a half,
Yeah,
right? So it's just created this this peaceful, like Nelson said, this peaceful way of doing life. And we're not there yet. We're just 5 years in. We're only 5 years in,
me
and
too.
we're already seeing the fruits of this, and so for him to say that meant a lot to me because I was the stressor. I was the money stressor before. I was like the penny pincher. "Oh, I don't know if we can do that. How are we gonna do this? How are we gonna," like,
Uh-huh.
that was kinda how I was, and so it I don't know, that was proof of positive growth for me, for him to notice that.
Yeah, that's
And that's what
huge.
I attribute it to. Oh, well, we're
Mhm.
doing things differently. We're doing things in a way where I don't feel like I have to carry that stress.
Yes.
And I think that's a huge deal.
And I echo that because 'cause I'm in the same point as you are, 5 years, almost 6 years in to my first policy, and I feel the same way, and I would have never dreamed as a single mom that I would be in a place where I feel the freedom to help my kids, even my grown adult children, if they need it, or it's just not the stress that it used to be because you actually have access to something that's growing. And even if you use it, it keeps growing. That's the amazing, that's the magic in the sauce, I think, right there. It's just like
Mhm,
you never are interrupting that compounding. And so you can know that next time you pay that back, there's gonna be more there than there was when you
mhm.
took it in the first place, because you didn't take it. I shouldn't say that, we borrowed against it, right?
Yeah,
But,
and that
yeah,
was a thing that was really, really hard for me to grasp at first, because I'm like, "How could your money keep growing if you're using it?" And, like, that doesn't make any sense to me, but I think that what helps to understand that is you're partnering with a company that's established. You're partnering with a mutually owned life insurance company. You're a part owner. Sometimes I call it a banking business in a box. They just happen to have everything you need. They can store your money, they can give you loans, they can allow you to pay back loans, and then they're taking your capital and going and making wise, conservative investments to guaranteeing the growth of all that while they let you use their money from the general fund for anything that you need, up to the amount that you've put in, right? It's not,
right,
like I said, not a free money machine, but because you're an owner. Ownership has privileges. Ownership gives access, right? You're an owner in the company, and so you're entitled to use company resources. And where else can you do that?
exactly.
There is no other place. There is no other place that you can do that. That you can have access to capital on an on-demand basis where your capital is guaranteed to go up and never down,
Yep.
right? Where you can pay back on your schedule. You have complete control of how that all that flows, when it gets replenished, when it gets borrowed, all those things. You are in control of that. Nobody's telling you what you have to do, how you have to qualify. It exists nowhere else.
No, it sure doesn't, and it is an interesting thought to realize that every single night you put your head on the pillow, the next morning, there's more there, no matter what. That is so powerful,
Hmm.
like, every day without fail. and they're the ones bearing the risk of that, but they have given you that guarantee. That it's just phenomenal. All right. Well, let me just ask you this a couple more questions about the book, because we've kind of gotten away
Okay.
from that a little bit. And I did have a couple questions on that. And one was, I know that somewhere along the lines you mentioned that the reaction of maybe David Stearns and or Lee.
It was Kim.
Oh, it's Kim. That's
Kim
right. It
has
was
been so
Kim.
encouraging. So Kim's David's wife,
Yes.
Nelson's daughter.
Yes.
And this this gave me chills. This was like worth my whole trip to the first coaches academy that I went to. Is she pulled me aside and she just said, "Hey, I just want to let you know, this book has really meant a lot to our family, and just the nod to Nelson and just the story and all that." She said, "But he used to love to go out on his properties that he had. You know, he was a forester at one point, and so
Hmm.
he still had some land, I guess, in that area. And but he said there were beavers out there, and he would always talk about the beavers." And I had no idea. I
Oh,
had
wow.
no idea. It just, like, gave me chills, you know? Again, like, "Okay, thank you, Lord." I don't think this was just some random idea that I had, right? But, um, but that was really neat to hear her say that, and that had been a blessing to their family, you know? Because I never had the opportunity to meet Nelson. I came on, found out about this after he'd already passed. And so, anyway, I thought that was really neat that connection was there,
That's really special.
unbeknownst to me.
All right. Well, speaking of Nelson,
Mhm.
I also did not have the opportunity to meet him. I've listened to a lot of his lectures on actually a DVD that I have to put in a Blu-ray player. But if you had one takeaway or a thing that you would say you have really appreciated about learning about Nelson Nash's life, what would
Mm.
that be?
I think definitely it would be his tenacity.
Mm.
And he took this idea that was in seed form, right, and was determined to get that out to the world. And just hearing him tell stories about the ways he tried to do seminars. He tried to pack it into, 2 hours or something and realized that was wholly inadequate. And then changed the seminar to 10 hours over a Friday night and Saturday, and was doing it that way. And would in the early days, he said he might have 60 people who said they're coming and one shows up or no one shows up. But he would do his seminar for one person. Or he would go to the home offices of these insurance companies and try to explain to them this idea and what he was trying to accomplish, and they just didn't get it, or they laughed, or they scoffed at him, and like, oh my gosh, how much conviction do you have to keep going
Yes.
in those circumstances? And I just really, really appreciate that, because it wasn't always what it is today. I mean, we look around now and infinite banking concept, for better or for worse, is all over the internet in all sorts of forms and fashions, right?
Good, bad, and ugly.
There's hundreds of practitioners that come together every year for a think tank. There's Zoom calls, there's coaching academies, there's all of these things, but it all stems back to him persevering through the early days. I think I would have quit.
Oh,
I think if somebody laughed me out of a home office at an insurance company, I think I would have just said, "I missed it. I'm sorry. I'm going to go back to, you know, growing trees or being in forestry," whatever it was,
exactly.
selling plain Jane life insurance. But he didn't do that. And to me, that is just a testament of this had to be some sort of divine seed placed in him, or idea, right? This had to be something that he felt so strongly about, that he would keep on for decades,
Yes. And
for
he
this to.
wasn't even young at the time. I mean, he was later in
Yeah.
life when he
Yeah, he
really.
probably could have retired and been just fine.
Yep.
He was already a $1 million roundtable, I think, producer in the insurance industry, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
Yeah, he didn't have to go through all that hard work and rejection, and really going against the grain, pushing against the system that was telling everybody the opposite of what he was teaching, but he did,
Yeah.
and I'm very grateful for that.
And the fact that he had those seminars and nobody show up, but then to go to the life insurance company and be rejected. You're right. I mean, I don't know many people that would have persevered, and yet now those same life insurance companies come to the think tank. You know, like
It's ironic.
that's
Yeah.
so amazing to me, and they, like, love what we're doing because they
Yeah.
now I don't know, they must have had their own light bulb moments, but,
Mhm.
just not really understanding the living benefits of whole life insurance. So, is it any wonder a lot of people have a hard time understanding what you can do with whole life if even the life insurance companies themselves rejected it at
Yeah.
first? Like,
Yeah.
that's
Well, I
pretty
think
crazy.
it's kind of akin to using a prescription off label. You know, a lot of times prescription medication is developed for a certain condition, and
Hmm.
then we find out later, "Oh, but you know what? It works for this too." It's completely seems unrelated, but for whatever reason, it works for this too. And I think it's kind of the same thing. Life insurance was not developed primarily to be a means of creating a banking system. That's not why it was. You did a great podcast on the history. I was so interesting to hear how that all started. Um, but it just so happens his works really well for this.
Yes.
And so, I think that it's just a different way of thinking about it. It's different. There's different goals when you're creating a banking system than when you're just purchasing it in the conventional sense. And I think sometimes it's even opposite goals,
Yeah.
you know, and so that it's just another thing to rethink your thinking. I'm building a banking system. I'm using this off prescription off label. It's all very legal. It's all very moral. It's all acceptable, right? We can do this.
Uh-huh.
There's, but it's definitely retraining old habits, retraining old mindsets, thinking a different way, and moving from one system to another over the course of a lifetime that will impact generations. And I think that's just such a powerful idea.
All right. So, as we wrap this up, what would you say is one of your favorite books? You can give me 2 or 3 if you prefer to do anything with
Hmm.
personal growth, finance, faith, fiction, you name it. What would you say?
Oh goodness.
Or any that you might
Um,
recommend?
A couple that come to mind that I've read lately, I have not been reading as much as I want to, but one called Chase the Line by Mark Battison is really great about, you know, chasing dreams, going after things, believing for outcomes that are bigger than you, not being afraid of those things. That was really a great book. And another one called Living Fearless by Jamie Winship. Um, just a great book on letting the Lord lead in your life and not being afraid. Maybe that's a theme of both of those of just not being afraid and accomplishing the purposes that we're set here for. So those are a couple that come to mind off the top of my head.
Those sound great. I'm gonna add them to my reading list because I
Yeah.
have not read them. So, okay, wonderful. All right. And so, any final thoughts that you have at all that we haven't touched on that you wanna share before we go?
You know, I think a lot about Noah and the ark when it comes to this,
Hmm.
and how when God told him to build that boat, it had never rained.
Hmm.
They w and people thought he was crazy, right? And some scholars say that they think it might have taken him 70 years to build the ark. Like, this was not a small project. This was a long time of dedicated, focused effort in the midst of people thinking he was the village idiot, right? But then when it did rain and the floodwaters did come and the waters did rise, it became, I mean, a lifeboat for his family, right? And not to mention all of the animals of the known world at the time. Um, and I kind of see this the same way. Like the storms are going to come. We know the storms are going to come. We don't know when. And so even if it sounds crazy,
Uh-huh.
building something in advance, building something, again, to quote Joe DeFazio, he calls it the before asset. Before you go do anything else, go do this first, and you will create that lifeboat for your family that will last generations. That you know that you can withstand those storms. That you're building on a rock and not sand. You're building on certainty and not hope. And I think that's just the intangible benefits of doing that, I think might even be greater than the financial benefits of doing that, of just having that peace, that certainty, in your life. So,
Absolutely. Very appropriate given the fact that we're in a shutdown right now, too, with the government.
yeah,
And I am in an
yeah.
area here in Hampton Roads where we have a very large military and government contracting demographic. And
Mm,
so this has hit home personally in my own family with 3 of my kids and their spouses essentially not receiving a paycheck. I think they just
wow.
missed their first paycheck today. So, and I love the fact that 5 years ago, I started building something and I've already called them all up. We're going to be
Mhm.
okay. And
Yeah,
we're going to do this and we're going to get through this together as a family, you know? And that's just like when you talk about the intangibles, you know what that does for this mama's heart to be able, sorry,
yeah,
to do that, you
yeah.
know? That is such a great picture. All right. Where can listeners find you and where can they get a copy of your book?
Yeah, so my website is salientssolutionsibc.com, and then my Beaver Bankers is available on Amazon. It's probably the easiest way to get it. And yeah, love for you to stop by, take a look around, and I'm so excited to talk with people about this concept because it truly has been life-changing for us and in ways I don't think I even realized yet. So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yes. Reach out to Becca. She's awesome. Becca, you have been a huge encouragement to me. And it was just, it's always been great to just be able to pick up that Marco Polo or the phone or text or whatever means and just say, hey, what do you think about this? And you got, and you've been so helpful and so encouraging to me. So I just want to thank you so much for that.
Well, vice versa. I'm very appreciative of relationships and community. It's a big deal.
And I also just really appreciate you coming on here and being able to share your story with my listeners. And thank you all for listening as well. And I hope you have enjoyed this. And I hope that this episode has been inspiring to you, maybe has given you a new way to look at things and gained a new perspective because of so many of the beautiful ways in which Becca has shared analogies as she likes to do. You're very creative with that. And so until next week, I hope you all have a great week and tune in next time. Thank you so much. Thanks for tuning in to the Bankless by Design podcast, where we're done with the system and we're doing money differently. Be sure to subscribe, share this episode with someone who needs it, and visit us at banklessbydesign.com to learn how you can start living bankless by design.